We can use language patterns, which are all about conversational hypnosis, let's say, and we can combine those with instructions that have to do with breathing shifts, right? So you can combine it with catalepsy, combine it with relaxation, combine it with breathing shifts, occupying physical attention through eye fixation or any other means.
Changing their physiology. All of these things can be fit together in a number of different ways.
Excellent. Hey everyone, in this video, Mike and I are going to talk to you about the principles of hypnosis. We want to give you some really fundamental ideas on how hypnosis works from a principles and a foundation perspective, because otherwise, I mean, you might just be stuck with things like scripts, right, Mike?
Yeah, and that's it. You see, when you have principles, when you understand why things work and so on, you can design things on the fly instead of being bound by reading a list of, suggestions to somebody, which is not the best way to work, because once you have the principles down, you're always prepared, anywhere, anytime, to do great hypnotic work.
So if you think about the principles of hypnosis, it's like the principles of anything. There's principles of music, principles of cooking, principles of mathematics, principles of fixing a car, or whatever you're talking
principles of talking about principles, even.
So if you know the principles, you'll be able to do this stuff like a pro. You'll feel confident. You won't need to rely on some script book, and you'll just be an awesome hypnotist. So here we go.
One of the key concepts you need to learn as a principle is rapport. When we are in rapport with someone, we share their model of the world. We're in a psychodynamic communication loop with them that's very powerful, rather than both being off in different directions and not really listening to each other. By giving the person your attention, remaining in rapport with them, you'll do stellar work, because we've seen the videos on YouTube with the instant inductions, the shock inductions. If you're not in rapport with someone, they'll come out of trance immediately. If you are in rapport with someone, the results are amazing.
This is a really important point, and it is not a point that is unique to hypnosis. So if you think about a group of friends hanging out, they tend to be in rapport with each other. Let's say a group of students in a class, they tend to feel part of a group, part of a unit, so they're in rapport with each other. An instructor can be in rapport with his students, etc., etc., etc. A comedian in the audience. So rapport is what we say in hypnosis. It's the glue that holds trance together. So if you don't have that rapport to begin with, basically, the whole trance experience is going to fall apart before it even starts.
And you can get rapport by matching their body language or tilting your head the same as theirs and so on. Just matching and mirroring will give you rapport. Now, there's another aspect to this, though, and that's this whole concept of heteroaction.
Okay.
Heteroaction goes back to Andre Weitzenhofer, who was a psychologist. In the 1950s, he wrote about this and coined the term heteroaction. Heteroaction basically means if someone fulfills a hypnotic suggestion that you have given them, successfully fulfills it, it increases the momentum and the likelihood that they will fulfill another suggestion, even if it's completely unconnected.
Absolutely, which is why when we're doing hypnosis, we always want to be using things like yes sets and compliance sets. We want to get people into the framework, into the momentum of agreeing with us, saying yes, and doing basic things that we tell them to do, the compliance part of it. So once you've got the heteroaction flowing, everything works in your favor and is very, very easy to continue with.
And we're keeping that the sequence. So you're going to ask them questions that would demand a yes response, a couple of them. That is building momentum, and it will build heteroaction, so your hypnotic work will be stellar. Yes to compliance. Get them to agree, then get them to do what you want them to do.
Okay, now we get into the meat of this. So once you've done a lot of the setup basic stuff, you'll see a lot of times in hypnosis, you'll see staring at this swinging watch or staring at your hand or whatever, breathing differently. So what's going on here is that in every aspect of hypnosis, there is some sort of occupying of the conscious attention.
Right, and this is going to happen with a traditional induction or any of the newer inductions. The conscious mind, its power has to be depotentiated. And by occupying the attention of the person, either staring at something or listening to something intently, that will depotentiate the conscious mind, and you can then use the principle of bringing the unconscious to the fore.
So one of the things, like we said, eye fixation is often used. We'll have someone stare at a spot on the wall or stare at a coin or stare at anything. If there's eye fixation, then obviously you are occupying the person's conscious attention, at least partially. But on top of that, we use language in very specific ways in hypnosis.
Right. We can direct the person's attention using language. For example, as you're listening to this now, you can feel the sensation of your feet inside your shoes. And if you're sitting down, you may notice the chair underneath you, and you might become aware of your own breathing and the temperature of the room. Now, by doing this, I'm shifting your conscious awareness and moving it around to occupy your conscious mind.
Right, and we'll get to a little bit more about language in a moment, but let's continue on with some of the basic principles here. Another one is you can direct changes in someone's physiology. Now we have an expression that comes out of Clark Hull from 1933. You want to talk about that?
Anything that assumes trance causes trance. In other words, if we need a so-called medium trance to get someone slumped down, really relaxed, we can do it the other way around. We don't have to hypnotize them and say, you're getting really relaxed, you're slumping down. We can change their physiology to that position, have them relax, and that gets us almost all the way to that trance by just doing the other side. We do the phenomena and get the trance by default.
So if you hear hypnotists saying things like, and you can just completely allow all of your muscles to relax, almost the beginning of one of those boring, long, progressive muscle relaxation inductions. If the point is to get someone to relax, that's changing their physiology, and it's going to make it much easier to get into trance, to begin to open that doorway to trance. But there are other ways that we can change physiology. For example, we can shift someone's breathing directly. We can tell them, take a deep breath and exhale slowly. And we can combine things and relax. What about catalepsy, Mike?
Catalepsy is one of my favorite things, and even better than dogalepsy. Oh, we're so funny. In reality, catalepsy has been understood for a couple of hundred years, and we'll see this whenever in a hypnotic trance someone's arm might be floating in the air or they can't open their eyes. Catalepsy means the agonist and the antagonist muscles are in perfect balance and the limb stops working. A hand may hover in the air. Legs may stop working so the person can't stand up. This is totally normal, and the great Milton Erickson said it happens automatically in trance sometimes. But if we produce catalepsy, guess what's happening? We're changing their physiology, we can change their breathing, and we're going to get a trance just by building in the phenomena.
And that's what we mean by, or what Clark Hull meant by, anything that assumes trance causes trance. So we can change the physiology of a client that we're working with or a subject through breathing, through relaxation, or by creating catalepsy, which give us inroads into trance. So let's now spend a little bit of time talking about the language patterns and how we can use language in a way that causes people to occupy their conscious attention on the language. And then we'll talk about how we combine some of these things so you'll understand, like a cook putting ingredients together, or a chef, I should say. That sounds much more elegant.
It does.
Like a chef combining things. You have the basics, but you can combine them in interesting ways. So let's start with language. Maybe pacing and leading.
Well, pacing and leading is the classic. In other words, you're pacing someone just like you're running in pace with them. If two runners run together and they're different stride lengths, it's difficult for them to pace each other. They want to run together, so they have to make some adjustments. Likewise, when you're doing hypnosis, you can pace your subject by offering back behavior they're already doing. So you can say, they're sitting in the chair, they're starting to relax, and you can say, and as you're sitting in that chair, and their brain is going, yes. And as you're starting to relax, and they will give you a yes back from that, or at least internally think yes, you're pacing their behavior by offering things that are already happening. But then we can go to leading.
Right. So as they're sitting there and noticing that feeling of their clothes on their body and the air temperature, it's easy to begin to let those muscles relax. So there's things that we can do to now tie what we've paced to what we want them to do, which is the leading. And that's basically how we're using language in a creative way to keep people's attention occupied. We have rapport that holds the trance together, and we're leading them into some physiological changes or suggestion or whatever it is that we're doing. Now we do have a free course on this. You'll find a link in the description below this video. And this is a course all about the introductory concepts of conversational hypnosis. If you sign up for that course, and it's totally free, I think you'll really enjoy it, and it'll be a good use of your time. Let's talk about what else we do, though, with words. We tell stories. We have hypnotic voice.
Well, also, Chris, we can pace our language so that it's gradually slowing. So if we naturally talk in a really fast way like this, that's not going to be the most useful method for getting someone into trance, because the brain starts to run slower in hypnosis. So we want to speak slower. We want to gradually slow down. And the other person, now that we have paced them and offered things back that are in their experience, will start to follow our voice and will start to go into deeper trances just because we are slowing the pace of our speech down. What about the voice?
Okay, so when it comes to your everyday conversational voice versus your so-called hypnotic voice, I want you to pay attention to this one, because there's some subtleties. If you're doing therapy, if somebody comes into your office and they're looking for change work, and you start doing hypnosis, it's expected for you to maybe really begin to talk
like a
quite slowly,
hypnotist.
like you would expect. You know, maybe not the commanding booming, and you're getting tired. You know, just that very subtle, slow voice. And it's completely
That becomes
appropriate.
hypnotic. It's completely appropriate.
But if you're having a conversation with a friend and you're just talking about some sort of problem they're going through in
Hello,
life.
Chris. How's that problem in your
You know,
life?
usually people will start talking and they're making a million
Animated, got
pictures
their
and all
hands
that.
going and stuff.
And you can guide them towards a slower pace.
That's
And you can
right.
just begin to ask them some interesting questions.
Questions.
And so when you're through this problem and when you've moved on to the next thing in your life, whatever that'll be, you can talk in a normal way that doesn't sound weird and creepy and hypnotic, but it is hypnotic.
It is hypnotic. And when you start to gradually cultivate a hypnotic voice, if you deal with the person again later, simply switching to that hypnotic voice will anchor the trance from before. You'll put them back in trance really easily. They'll become accustomed to your hypnotic voice, meaning you're going into hypnosis now.
Absolutely. All right, so let's wrap up. I want to wrap up by reviewing some of the principles and talking about how we can combine these tools to make beautiful hypnotic dishes, just like a wonderful chef. There you go. So let's talk about the recap of the main principles. We talked about rapport. We talked about heteroaction. We talked about occupying the conscious attention.
We talked about pacing and leading someone's
using
behavior.
language.
We talked about changing physiology. We talked
catalepsy,
about
breathing,
anything that assumes
relaxation.
trance causes trance. We can produce phenomena like catalepsy, like you said.
Okay, so now the fun magic of combining these things. So for example, let's say we can set up a cataleptic hand in some way. What can we do with that? We can have the subject stare at that
Draw
hand.
their attention to it, which focuses their conscious mind. And you can use that to layer on things like, and as you look at that hand, you can allow it to sink as you relax. Now we're cascading it into relaxation as well. Put the things together in a number of different ways while maintaining rapport with the person, and you'll find hypnosis is easy to accomplish.
We'll give you one more before we wrap up. Let's talk about how you can do physiological shifts around breathing. So take a deep breath in and let it out slowly. Close your eyes and begin to relax.
And
now
begin to go into trance.
We can use language patterns, which are all about conversational hypnosis, let's say, and we can combine those with instructions that have to do with breathing shifts, right? So you can combine it with catalepsy, combine it with relaxation, combine it with breathing shifts, occupying physical attention through eye fixation or any other means.
Changing the physiology. All of these things can be fit together in a multiple.
Right.
All of these things can be fit together in a number of different ways.
Excellent. So make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you're subscribed to our channel. Go ahead and do that right now because you're already here, and we'll see you in the next video. I forgot the N in the description area. You'll find.
Here, I'll go over there and yell at you to do it.
No, that's fine.
In the description area.
All right, we'll just leave it at that.